Good evening and welcome. It's time to call this special call board meeting of the San Felipe Del Oro CISD Board of Trustees to order, today being Tuesday, October the 8th, 2024. Mr. Secretary, would you call roll for us?
Yes, sir. Mrs. Luna Chavez.
Present.
Mr. Almaraz.
Present.
Mr. Overfeld.
Here.
Mr. Mesa.
Here.
Mrs. Guanajuato Webb.
Present.
Ms. Haynes.
Here.
Sir, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Let the record show that we do have a quorum of board members and that this meeting has been duly called in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. We'll have opening ceremonies, and we're going to do a moment of silence. We had a longtime educator who passed away recently, Mr. Rogelio Dominguez. If we could please stand and take a moment of silence, and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance after that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I would like to ask board members if we could move some items up. Mr. Diego Almaraz has a service to attend, and if it's okay with the board to move the items under administration up. We don't have any citizens to be heard on the agenda. No one signed up, so if we could go, if that pleases the board?
Yes.
Okay, then we'll go straight to administration. Item 10A. First item is consideration to approve the project proposal for the 25-26 middle school grade level configuration. Dr. Rios.
Good evening, Mr. Mesa, members of the board. We continue to discuss the project proposal for the middle school grade level reconfiguration. We had two community forums, and we met with the staff at Garfield, Del Rio Middle School, and San Felipe Memorial Middle School. We want to modify the recommendation a little bit as was described in the memo. We want to continue with recommending 3 middle schools, 6th through 8th grade, one to be held at Del Rio Middle School, one to be held at San Felipe Memorial Middle School, and one at Garfield Middle School. However, the students at Garfield were originally recommended that 50% of the students would be assigned to the blended academy as a small neighborhood school, and the remaining 300 would be rezoned to nearby campuses. That is still part of the plan, except I would inform the board that currently we have approximately 1,100 extra seats in the district for elementary. So there is a possibility that all 600 students at Garfield could be rezoned to nearby schools and not cause the population at any one school to increase more than 625, 640 students. However, before we decide that, I would like more time to engage the parents in the Garfield community to decide if they want a neighborhood school or if they want to be rezoned. There was some mention at the Garfield staff meeting that maybe going to a blended academy as a elementary school may not be the most equitable thing to do because maybe they don't have a gym just yet or they don't have the size of library. I think that would be better decided by the parents. So today I'm recommending that we continue with the middle school redesign proposal, but that the location of the neighborhood students from Garfield, that just be decided through the rezoning process and that I have some time to confer with the community. I will set up as many meetings as I can with as many parents to get that input. But for that, I would report to the board the updates on that. So at this time, Mr. Mesa, if there are any questions considering the redesign, before I make a formal recommendation, I would ask for.
Okay, questions from board members?
Oh,
Yeah.
no, go ahead,
Ms.
go ahead, Josh, so I can listen,
Okay.
maybe you.
Mr. Overveld?
Over the last several weeks, we've gone in and discussed this. We've heard from, or we've visited, because on the advice of the board, administration was asked to visit with the 3 campuses that would be affected, host another community forum, which happened last night. And those all took place as requested. The vast majority of the board members were able to attend 1 or 2 or all of those meetings and hear what staff had to say, here at the center to hear what some parents, community members went in and had to say. And I think over the last several weeks, as we've thought about this and debated it internally, at least in my mind, there's been three areas that it all centers on me, or for me, excuse me. One is, of course, the issue of safety. They're going from a 7th and 8th grade that has 1,400 or so students down to spread, and then taking the other, I don't know the number off the top of my head for 6th grade. There are probably 700 something plus students. And dividing that over 3 campuses, giving us anywhere between 700 and 750 across 3 grade levels, is a good thing in the sense of safety. Absolutely agree with that. It becomes a much more manageable situation there. The academic side of it becomes more manageable because we start to go in and see the hope of smaller class sizes and with less discipline interruptions, more learning goes in and takes place. The one thing that still has me hung up there is, and we emailed back and forth about this, Dr. Rios, as I was trying to get clarification, is just the issue of finances there. I know that in order to do this, we will have to do some conversion, as you talked about in many of the meetings at Garfield, to bring it up to, at least the restrooms, up to code for middle school aged individuals, and then the security fencing for San Felipe Memorial, which I think you alluded to would be grant funded, and I don't know if that comes from the safety and security allotments we get from the state, or is that a different grant? So one is that do we already have that money to begin fencing and have it ready to go August of 25 to have the San Felipe Memorial campus completely fenced off and ready to go for the first day? Because you mentioned it would be a grant, so I'm curious as to where that money is going to come from and if it's available already.
I'm sorry, Hector, I was motioning to Chief. Chief, when do we anticipate the last award of the grant funds for the safety and security?
Good evening. I believe they've already come in, sir, an additional 73,000 and change.
So the money is on hand to do that, sir.
Okay, so with the 73 and change that you talked about, we believe that we can put up the 6 or 8 foot non-scalable fence. And are we going to be, by the time we get to August, are we hopeful that we will have already handled the situation on Water Street that will allow us to close that down by the time that begins?
The conversations that we had with the city about closing Water Street seemed favorable. There was a change in the management of the city. We have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow. Unfortunately, that meeting, I was informed today, is postponed. But I'll be clearer about that once we have that meeting with the city management. If it's all resolved by January at the latest, then absolutely we would have enough time, sir. But I have not had the meeting with the new management. Everything seemed to be heading in that direction up until the change in leadership. So I have to continue that conversation.
Okay. I know we talked about the issue of moving those students out from Garfield, and that's still to be determined, whether we do 50% or the entire. And you mentioned the number of seats that are available. So just want to ensure that we're not going to overcrowd some of the in-town elementaries and create overcrowding there.
Yeah, there's plenty of room, sir. The one sheet that we did review today is that the utilization at most of the campuses is below 80%. So that would not, overcrowding would not occur. But I can't give you a specific number of how many would go to each school until we work with a demographer, and I asked him to present to the Citizens Committee that you all will approve tonight.
And then the last thing, because I want to be respectful of Mr. Almaraz's time, is the, we went through a very rough budget cycle where we had to trim and cut back in different programs and stuff like that. I want to ensure that we're not adding more to a deficit that still exists and that we're going to have to be cognizant of come the next cycle, because we're all holding our breath for what's going to happen in January of '25 with the legislature and funding there. That's probably my biggest worry right now.
Absolutely. We have discussed that academic achievement isn't going to happen just because we have 3 smaller schools. I think safety is going to happen just because we have 3 smaller schools. That's going to be immediate. For the student achievement to increase, obviously the collaboration of the teachers, the vertical planning, the teachers coming together, increased attendance hopefully will be generated by having more personalized attention to the students. It would be our hope that there could be smaller class sizes. But we're cognizant of the deficit. We're hoping that in January there's some relief where we can begin to see the way to increase staffing, especially in the special needs. But none of that would occur unless there is additional funding. I mentioned yesterday that our district was increasing the number of outcome bonuses just because we're having more success. So as we increase that type of funding, the idea would be that we reinvest it in the student needs. And that's our hope. But to say that immediately we're going to create a bigger deficit, that's just not the case. Are we going to need additional staff? It is possible that we're going to need, for example, once we decide the counseling numbers, if the board wants, if we recommend and the board wants 1 counselor per grade level, then yes, we are 1 counselor short. If we want to maintain a library at each one of the campuses, which we do, because they're middle schools, then we are 1 librarian short. But other than that, I don't anticipate any other additions.
Thank you.
Anyone else with a question? Mr. Almaraz?
Just a couple items. One of them was the fence project, and thanks for answering that. As Mr. Overfelt asked, that was one of the things on my mind. The other is how soon do you plan to have the I guess, the Chihuahua neighborhood meetings with some of the parents that is directly going to affect Garfield students.
The demographer won't have the completed report for maybe 30 days.
Okay.
I'd like to have something to show them, but I would begin scheduling them now, as of tomorrow, but would not have those till the first week of November, maybe last week in October.
Okay. And the other thing on that, going back to Garfield, getting, keeping 50% of the students there or dispersing all 100, decompressing that school completely amongst all the other elementary schools. That, just for clarity, that idea to completely disperse 100% of the students will eventually come back if, that school will eventually come back if we decide as a community, right, to bring it back. Let's get this bond going, things like that, to rebuild it and get it ready for our students in our community, if that's something we decide to do or the community decides to do. Is that-
Absolutely.
Okay, just making sure, because I do want people to know that we're not completely looking at closing a school down, and just shutting the doors, and it's not going away. But we want it to be turnkey, where the students can come in, the next year or two, and they have a facility that they're able to use, and it's up to standards, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Anyone else?
I
Amy?
do, Mr. Mesa. And so if we don't, and they have to go to blended, we have to get that. Are we gonna be able to get that together, like what was mentioned at the meetings, the cafeteria situation, and, I mean, there's other, concerns the community had about blended, so, if you don't disperse our children and they wanna stay, you're gonna take them to blended, correct?
Correct.
So blended needs to be, updated, shuffled, just some things going on that you don't have to, like Josh says, you'll have to take care of the toiletries and stuff like that. Well, this, accommodate for our elementary. Because honestly, my gut says that I see us keeping, me personally, I don't think the citizens of Chihuahua, and I might be wrong, but in my spirit, I don't think they're gonna I think we're gonna be at blended for a small community, for a small neighborhood school, and I'm just being honest with you. So, I don't think the majority of them want their children dispersed. And we can understand that, so now we have to have the funds to get blended up and ready, so we can do that.
Absolutely. For 300 students, most of the work would be done by our operations department. The materials that would be needed to reconfigure the restrooms,
Right.
that's something that we can all do. That's not a problem. And that was planned for before we had the idea of having the community decide if they want a small elementary campus or if they want to be rezoned to some other schools. So we can make either plan work, but I really think that we need the input from the parents that would be left at blended. Do you all want to go here, or do you want to go at these other places?
Okay, so how are we gonna make that choice? Who's gonna stay and who's gonna go?
Well,
The demographer, I guess.
well, the closest students to Garfield geographically are the ones that would stay. They're the ones that would stay. So the demographer is going to help us figure that out. And the closest 300 students would
Okay.
stay. So yes, the demographer would be the one to guide us there. And those 300 students are the ones that we would visit, well, their families are the
Yeah.
ones we would visit with.
Okay,
We would just visit just with those 300 students or their parents, because they're the ones that have to decide or guide us in that decision.
okay. So, let me just be clear. Something has to be done with the middle school, absolutely. But me, I don't, I'm feeling some type of way about the dispersion and the stuff, and, you know, so we've had plenty of time, and I appreciate that, Dr. Rios, of you having these meetings and stuff, and I've sat, and I've got emails, and I've thought, and I've had plenty of time to think. There wasn't enough people, community parents out yesterday, so I was disappointed, sad about that. But I still, like I said, I got my emails. I've got, you know, people contacting me, and I appreciate that, because then I had more thinking to do. But I just want to be clear, something has to be done with the middle school. It's a safety issue, and I totally agree with that. But I have some other thoughts, and I've had a long time to think, so I just wanted to put that out, you know, to be clear. So thank you, Mr. Mesa.
Thank you, Amy. My biggest concern is, and I mentioned this before, I happen to attend Garfield Elementary. I just want to make sure that it's equitable, you know, in regard to computer labs, library materials, and the like, because there's a lot of variables. It's the largest campus, so low socioeconomic. We have a majority of bilingual students, and just want to make sure they have the needed resources in regard to computer labs, libraries, and, you know, all the other programs that are available at the other elementary schools. So just want to make sure that that is equitable in regard to every other elementary campus. Okay. Mr. Galindo.
Guess just a quick timing question. When you're talking about if you are going to keep 50% there at Garfield, when would that work start? Are you going to move blended at the end of the first semester over to the old Cardwell in order to make sure that the amenities and facilities are properly constructed, or what is the timeline based off of that if the choice was to do the 50% there at the blended academy?
If the choice is to do 50% at the current blended for a small Garfield neighborhood, we would begin the work for blended in January. And that work would be done right about, at least the work that needs to get done would be done about May. And then that would already be done. So then we could start moving the teachers over. And then we would move to do the restrooms and at both Garfield and blended over the summer. So everything would start in August. But blended is the empty the East Side campus is the empty campus. So that one we can start working on immediately.
Thank you.
Okay. Then Dr. Rios, do you want to read the recommendation, please?
Yes, Mr. President. It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the project proposal for the 25-26 middle school grade level reconfiguration as presented.
Okay. Dependent on committee involvement from Garfield parents in regard to the final action.
Yes, sir. That's the rezoning is
Okay.
separate. Yes, sir.
Okay. You've heard the recommendation from administration. Is there a motion for approval? Motion made by Mrs. Webb, seconded by Becky Chavez. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 affirmative. All those opposed? 1 opposed, 1 abstention, 1 abstention. Motion passes. Next item we have under administration, consideration to approve the establishment of the 2024-2025 District Facility and Operations Citizens Committee to evaluate current and future capital improvement needs. Dr. Rios.
Yes, sir. Mr. Mesa, the initial idea was to form a citizens committee that would begin to evaluate the facilities. In the process of it, we talked about having the same committee assist with the current reconfiguration plan for the middle school projects. So therefore, the committee that would be approved today, the first task would be to work with the middle school reconfiguration, looking at the facilities, looking at the proposed work that would be done at the facilities, evaluating the demographer's work, and guiding those recommendations that would be made to the board or to administration tacked upon. Every board member was consulted with various times, and there was a lot of members that signed up that came to the forums or at the campuses. So we updated the memo that is in front of everyone. The committee would consist of 2 parents appointed by every member and 1 staff appointed by every board member, every trustee. The 3 principals for each of the middle schools, there's 1 to be determined. And then there were alternates that didn't fall under the board members. So the alternates would be asked to visit to participate in the discussions, but if there was ever a vote on a difficult decision, they would not vote unless they took the place of somebody that didn't participate in the committee.
Questions from board members? Hearing none. The recommendation, sir?
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the establishment of the 24-25 District Facility and Operations Citizens Committee as presented.
For the recommendation from administration, there's a motion by Mr. Alindo, a second by Mrs. Webb. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. There's one other item. If we can go to business and finance. Item 13, consideration to approve the 2025 Valverde County Appraisal District budget. Amy Childress.
Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Reyes, and members of the board. The Valverde Appraisal District Board of Directors adopted their 2025 budget on September 12th, 2024, and the district has 30 days to decide whether to approve or take no action or disapprove the budget.
Okay. I think we've heard this item before. Are there any questions from board members? Again, the concern is as an entity, I know we're the biggest contributor to the appraisal budget. I believe the amount is over $25 million for the appraisal district, and this was a very difficult year for us, as Mr. O'Farrell mentioned, with budget constraints and really very little money coming from the state, and so we had to make some reorganizations of staff, reassign staff, and it was very difficult to do that and not provide a salary increase at all, except for a stipend, a return stipend, which not everyone gets. It's only the people that were here previous to this year. And so it makes it very difficult for us to see a large percentage in salary increases with that budget that is before us. From the appraisal district, I can understand, some of the people that got certification, and so they move up some of the steps, but it's very difficult for us. And I know Jackie's here. I want for you to understand that it makes it difficult for us to substantiate to our staff that, we're approving above and beyond what we, because we gave 0% salary increase. And so it's difficult for us to be able to allocate some of our monies because we are the biggest contributor to some of the races that are being given by the appraisal district. So in essence, what I'd like to say is we're not going to be able to do this, like every year. It's not possible. We're setting a bad example for our staff If we do not provide salaries and yet, have a retention stipend instead of a salary increase and be able to allocate some of our monies for salary increases above and beyond what we normally give to our teachers. We normally say between 2 and 3%. And to see some of the salaries go up as much as, and I see the certification like 16%, but overall it's somewhere around 8%. Correct, Jackie? So the average increase would be somewhere around 8%, 7, 8%. You want to come over and?
Good evening, President Mesa, members of the board, Dr. Rios. No, sir, it's at 3%, 3 to 4% across the board, and then the highest percentage is an 11%. That's due to certification pay. One of the things that I didn't mention before was, and I know I've been asking for information from the school district, from the city, and from the county. I've done an open records request regarding salary increases and the history for the last 2 years. And one of the things that I did not mention last time, and last time I wasn't prepared to make a presentation because I know that you wanted to wait to see what the other entities were going to do. We are not at the mid-level of our pay scale, meaning we have not done a market study or a market adjustment since 2015. So we're beneath the mid-level, and just if I understand correctly, and Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, but over the last couple of weeks that I've requested information, it seems like the school district, TASB does an annual market study. And you either get plus or minus 10% of the mid-level of your pay scales. We're not there. We're on the lower end of between minimum and mid. And so not doing a cost of living adjustment sets us back further. Now, the budget that I presented was lower than the current year's budget. So it is less than what you're currently paying. And you contribute about $642,000 a year. So it is lower than the 2024 budget, not doing a cost of living increase and adjusting those appraisers that are going from level 1 to the next level, then of course that sets us back even further. So that's the reason why, and I explained that to my board. I received unanimous support through our board of directors, unanimous support at the city, and unanimous support at the county. And I invested a lot of time contacting commissioners and city council members. I met with the new city manager and explained the situation. I also informed her that it takes about $46,000 to get an appraiser from level 1 to level 4. So in doing this, it's not just because I want to advocate for my employees, but I also want to safeguard public funds. We're investing about $46,000 just to get our appraisers certified when they can go to another county or to the state and make more money. And so it's not just about giving a raise, and I understand and I respect your decision. Whatever you decide today, I respect it. But I just want to inform you that that's the reason why we did it. It's because we're not even at mid-level of our pay scale.
Jackie, when I do remember looking at salary increases overall,
Yes, sir.
and overall the staff, it was something like 7.7.
I have them here. And
And
no,
I'm talking
sir.
about all the salaries.
Can I just clarify
Yes.
a couple of points? The overall increase, ma'am, is like 2 or 3%, correct?
So we did a 2% cost of living to the
No.
pay scale.
Right.
And then the pay scale has a built-in longevity and a built-in percentage into each classification for certification pay. So, for example, it ranges between, it ranges between a 2.91 to 3.85. And now those are the ones that are not getting recertified. We do have several appraisers that are going through the certification process. And those ranges are between 6.98 to 11.49.
So that was the clarification.
Yes, sir.
There's a 2% cost of living, and then there's a step increase. Those two combined are the average that you're providing. And then some, because of certification,
Yes.
have the added amount of money.
Yes, sir.
The other clarification is that we've worked with TASB for 10 years now to try to get the salaries of all the employees to be at least at 90% of market. And then we tried to not have any of them exceed 110% of market. So it's taken us about 10 years to get to that point. There's only a couple of employees that aren't at market. But again, so we've worked with TASB and the board, except for 2 years that we haven't been able to provide an increase. We've worked to stay at market, so.
Yes,
I
and
think that's what she's talking about.
Yes, sir, I am. And Ms. Childress was very helpful in providing that information to me. And she did explain that it was plus or minus 10% from mid-level of your pay scales. We're not plus or minus 10% anywhere close to mid-level. So in considering our budget for this year, I did present that two options to our board, and I said we can do anything they want. They can give me a directive, or we can do one option was to stay with the COLA, and what we do is we just apply a cost of living to the pay scale that's already been established. And then, or we can do a stipend. And so those were the two recommendations from the district. And then they had a third option to give me a directive to do something different. After I presented the numbers and what it costs to get an appraiser certified and what the state is paying, what other counties are paying, and the fact that we're not at mid-level of our pay scale, they opted to go with the option to continue to do the COLA and adjust the pay scale. I've explained that to the commissioners. I've presented information that they've requested, and I think I've presented information to Dr. Rios and Amy as well. And that's the reason why we decided to go with that recommendation, and the board decided to unanimously approve that recommendation.
Dr. Rios?
I just want to clarify. The midpoint is misleading because just because we're at market doesn't mean we're at midpoint either. Okay, so those are two separate things. We are at market. We're not necessarily at midpoint for our employees, but we are at market.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the other point is, unfortunately, we don't have a market study for the appraisal district. So
Okay.
we don't know that you might be below midpoint, but we don't know that you are at market or below market because y'all have never had that type of study or have not had it in the last 5-10 years. Is that what you're saying?
Well, actually, the last one we did was in 2015. The board did ask me to gather information for this year. A pay study would cost us $15,000. So it's not prudent when we can get that information from other entities and other salary studies that have been provided to other appraisal districts. And that's what we've done is we've gathered information that they've gathered and then put it together for presentation for our board of directors. So, to try to save money, it would cost $15,000 to do a pay study.
So Jackie, let me ask you again. When you add up your salary increase
Yes, sir.
and cost of living and retention, what do you end up with?
Okay, so everyone's adjustment would be a 6.12% increase over last year.
Yeah,
That's a cumulative of people that are getting recertified, moving up to a subsequent level, or just moving up in the pay scale.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm talking about. when
Yes,
you
sir.
Add up all those.
Okay. Yes, sir. It was a 6.12 cumulative for all the positions. Yes, sir.
Any questions from board members? No. Hearing none. Amy, you want to read the recommendation?
Mr. President, in a case like this, there is no recommendation from administration. A board member has to either move that you approve the budget or move that you deny the budget or take no action. If you take no action, then it's automatically approved. If you move to deny the budget, then you have to have a majority of the board approve it. But the superintendent and Ms. Childress, we don't make a recommendation in this case. it's up to the board to approve or deny.
Okay. Is there a motion from a board member? Hearing no motion, then no action will be taken.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I'm glad Mr. Almaraz had to attend the service, so he has already left. We'll continue now. If you go on to the consent agenda, there's some purchase items on the consent agenda. Item 9. If there's any question, now's the time to bring that question up to administration. Any item that needs to be pulled. Some of these items have appeared in previous meetings, and there's been some more explanation given to you in regard to purchase items. Any questions from board members? If not, then I'll entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda. Motion made by Mr. Galindo, seconded by Amy Haynes. All those in favor? Consent agenda is approved. Okay, the time is 6:46 p.m. We're going to go into executive session. No action will be taken in executive session. If there is a vote that is required for any items, it will be taken upon reconvening into open session. Again, time is 6:46 p.m. We're now in executive session. Thank you. Okay, the time is 7:33 PM. We're reconvening an open session. No action was taken in executive session. We're down to item 18A on our agenda. First item is discussion, possible action to approve the personnel report to include the following: new hires, district vacancies, retirements, resignations. Amy Childers.
Good evening, President Mesa, Dr. Rios, and members of the board. It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the resignations, vacancies, and following new personnel. Crystal Tristan, first grade teacher at Garfield Elementary. Jacqueline Flores, special education teacher, life skills at Dr. Lonnie Green Elementary. And Roberta Hernandez, special education co-teacher at Del Rio High School.
For the recommendation, is there a motion for approval? Motion made by Mrs. Webb, seconded by Amy Haynes. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Item B, discussion and possible action for the salary adjustment to include but not limited to the following: service credit, salary matrix adjustment. Amy Childers.
Good evening. It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve the salary adjustments as discussed in closed session.
For the recommendation, a motion made by Ms. Orfeld. Is there a second to the motion? Mrs. Webb? All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Item C, consideration to approve the position of 21st Century Community Learning Center Program Site Coordinator, ACE grant at Lamar Elementary. Amy Childers.
Yes, sir. It is the recommendation of administration that the Board of Trustees approve Melissa Aguilar for the position of 21st Century Community Learning Center Program Site Coordinator at Lamar Elementary.
For the recommendation, is there a motion made by Becky Chavez, seconded by Ms. Orfeld? All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Item D, consideration to approve the position of speech language pathologist assistant at Del Rio Middle School. Amy Childers.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve Karina Esquivel for the position of speech language pathologist assistant at Del Rio Middle School.
You've heard the recommendation. There's a motion from Mr. Alindo, seconded by Mrs. Webb. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Item E, consideration to approve the position of counselor for Del Rio High School. Amy Childers.
It is the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Trustees approve Brenda Delgado for the position of counselor for Del Rio High School.
For the recommendation, motion made by Amy Haynes, seconded by Mrs. Webb. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. The time is 7:06 PM. There being no other items on the agenda, is there a motion for adjournment? Motion made by Mr. Alindo, seconded by Amy Haynes. All those in favor? Motion is unanimous. Thank you and good night, everyone.